It's interesting what you say about an accent, because when you say your voice has an accent, your eyes also have an accent. You ever noticed that?
I like this. Welcome everybody to this ArteSettima podcast in Spaghetti Digitali. We are really happy because it's the first time we finally do something about the partnership we were discussing in a long time. And what could be better than starting with an artist such as Vincent Peters and with an artist such as Greta Ferro. And I'm really happy about that. My name is Andrea.
My name is Tommaso.
Ciao.
And this is the first thing we did together, so we are really happy about that. And you were saying something really great, Vincent.
Yes, so think about it. Because it's literally just like what you said. So what's interesting about it is that your first language, no matter where you are, will define your accent for every other language you speak. Now, when you grew up in Italy, if you know, more or less you can spend 20, 30 years in New York, you will have a bit of an Italian accent, you know? It's just in there.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're French, it's like your first language, it's coloring all the languages you will speak after. But it's the same thing for the way you look at things, you know? The way you see things, the way you perceive things, your first impressions will always be the filter to everything that you see afterwards. You know what I mean?
I love that.
So there is something that your first impression will always define all the impressions after will build on top. That means you will, as much as you will always speak languages through the Italian accent, your eyes will always see things through your Italian or German or French eyes, you know.
And can we say that, this is really interesting, can we say that a person that decided to travel in his life to find places, to find a way to, even to escape from the place he was born in, is something that is both a war against the place you were born in and a way to rediscover it. I mean, what you're saying is that I will always be watching, be perceiving with the first way I was not only educated, but just the first
conditioning.
way. Conditioning.
There's a conditioning.
And when you understand that as an artist, as you're saying, does it become both something that you want to escape from and something you have to take it again?
Well, I think, I mean, you know, I guess that's a question of interpretation, but I do think you have to embrace it.
Okay.
You know? But I mean, it's funny, a couple of days ago I had this discussion with Greta, to bring Greta into the discussion. And look, I mean, you can see that conflict that you talk about is also a traditional or parental conflict. You know, it could be a religious conflict. Now, let's say you grow up very Catholic. You will always feel guilty about certain things. And I think no matter what, you can see what I think is an interesting, just as an example, for example, you can say that even if you're completely resigned from the church, or if you're alone on Christmas, you feel different than when you're alone a week later on Thursday. There's something about that day that you feel it should not be like the other days. And you can tell every day that, you know, religion has nothing to do with your life, but there's a deeper layer in your DNA. And so is kind of like an eternalized tradition, an eternalized father figure, an eternalized mother figure, you know. And I think that would sort of like go. So I think the question is like what you say: will you fight it or will you embrace it? How do you solve the conflict? Will you be submissive? Will you just follow it? Okay, this is how it is. This is how I feel good. Or you say, no, I have nothing to do with that. You know, me, for example, I have a big, you know, I think in Italy, you're very lucky that you come from such a beautiful country. But me, for example, I have a big problem with Germany. I don't feel at home there, but I will never be at home anywhere else. You know, I will never be Italian. I can try all my life. It's just not going to happen. You know, I can spend 50 years here. I will still be German. But I still don't feel at home in Germany, you know. So you can have the same conflict with your father. And to go back to photography, you can have a similar conflict with the first with the interpretation or with the conditioning of how your mind is interpreting and seeing things, you know. But you may not be aware of it. This is a very subconscious process.
That's really interesting, and I have a question with that. That is a question that I can ask to all of us, because as you were saying, the place you were born in is not the place you feel as your place, but still is the place that you can call home. So my question is was in that place, was in Germany, or was in the first place we were born, the first time that we realized that we love beauty, that we wanted to search beauty in our lives, to search art and beauty in our lives? Was in Germany that you find it?
Well, look, think about it. That's an interesting question. And I think it connects to everything else. Now, let's say there is something that you perceive as very beautiful. It could be something in the everyday. Today you've seen something. It could be the woman on the Dolce & Gabbana advertisement. It could be Greta. It could be it could be a Picasso, you know. But let's say there's a person that you're something really connecting with. Now, I think there's different ways of relating to that beauty. Now, you can say, okay, this person, you know, you probably heard people saying this, okay, this person is sort of like not out of this world, and she's not from this planet, and she's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. We say that, which is a certain sense of kind of like positioning yourself. You put coordinates, they up here, you down there. And you're probably fine with that because it gives you a certain peace. But then you can sort of like people, they said, yeah, you know, I kind of like her dress. I mean, maybe I should try. And then, you know, you approach, well, you know, whatever, the shoes, or, you know, you can say, oh, maybe I like the haircut. And you edge, you move a little closer to who they are. Then you can also say, you know, I may like the life they're living. I may like the way, maybe I want to go to these places, you know, maybe I want to be like them. You know, which is, you see, it's a different concept of identity. You can try to be more, you know, I would say you put yourself almost in competition, but you have a relationship with that person that you find really beautiful. And from there, it's just a very small step to saying, I want to be like them, I don't want to be like myself, you know, which changes everything else and possibly even opens the door to plastic surgery and permanent, you know, modifications of who you are, you know. So there's very different concepts in that. But to go back to your question, and without being too emotional about it, I think where this really comes from is when you grow up, there was one person that was really close to you. How did you react? And if that person told you that you don't have to work for being loved, but you deserve it. And he told you more than once. And that same person told you, the way you wake up in the morning, you're very beautiful. And your whole life would be different. And if that person hasn't told you that, or if that person hasn't convinced you of that, you know, there's
Why are you looking at me?
I don't know. I mean, I say there's probably people in this room waking up every day trying to fight the battle of feeling good enough, you know. So I think what I'm trying to say is, if you look at a picture, because that's obviously was your question, there will never be two people interpreting one picture in the same way, but what an ordinary picture can be, and what I'm talking about, like I said, it could be a L'Oreal advertisement. It could walk you very deep into your very own emotional landscape in a place where nobody else could find. And on that landscape, you will probably get lost standing on the field of your past and trying to navigate what happened to your life in the last years and why do you feel the way you feel when you see that picture. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. That's really, really.
So
really
what I'm saying is, often an ordinary photograph, the reaction to it can walk you or guide you into places you would never be without it, and can evoke an emotional reaction that you find out a relationship with how much love did you get intuitively before you even remember before you even remember being that person that you are right now at an age between maybe 5 and or maybe 2 and 7 or something. You know what I'm trying to say? So, but beauty is an extremely sensitive and very emotional subject.
Yes, and in the way you say that, it's something that without even knowing, you feel and you understand that it means the way you will live. It means the way you will try to stay in the world. I mean, people.
Well, it is that feeling of the relationship we have with beauty is also an emotionalizing standards and expectations, because that's what we really do. Now, if you can keep up with those standards, probably was more or less defined by something, that I think in psychology call it the self-object. I left school kind of early, so if anybody here knows better, please correct me. But if that object of that person who gave you that relationship was able to give you that comfort that, you don't have to be something else. And I think that obsession we're having with beauty today is a constant wrestling, a battle, a conflict with public standards, because the public standards are constantly imposed into our life. Now, just 50 years ago, the generation from our fathers, public beauty standards were made maybe in Hollywood or maybe at Cinecittà. Is that how you say it? Cinecittà?
Cinecittà.
Cinecittà. But now it's the girl next door. There's the girl on the street across who has like 20,000 or whatever, 15,000 or 2 million followers. It's been deglamorized. Suddenly it moved into your neighborhood. You have to compete with it. Before it was Liz Taylor, it was something, different. That's what I said. When you look at people, they say, there used to be Liz Taylor and there's you, and that's fine. I don't have to be Liz Taylor. Today, in a certain way, there might all be that diversity, but the conflict of it became a lot more personal.
Yes, this is really interesting. I mean, the way before we feel like the real beauty was in a pantheon outside our world, and now the beauty is feeling more close to us. But I would love to know also the other answer, even for Greta. Which was the moment, not the first, but a moment that you feel now that made you understand how beauty was something that you loved, not about yourself, about the world. I mean, the fact that you were in relationship with art and beauty, when you realized that, when you said, okay, that's something for me, that means something.
Well, it depends on how you grow up as well, but as Italians, we're very lucky because we were born in art and in beauty and culture and everything else. It's everywhere. That's why you love Italy so much, because you sense that very easily.
Well, you just walk down the street. I just walked down the street today, and it was just the way the light hit a door frame, and I was like, wow.
And you were like, fuck yeah.
I was like, fuck yeah. I was hugging the door frame, And if I would be in Berlin, I would not hug anybody,
No,
I would just sit there with my sausage in my hand and think, what am I doing?
Well, I think we are used to having a different perception of things around us, of colors. Like the sky is different in Italy.
It is.
I've lived abroad more than once, and every time I was away from home, from my colors, from my culture as well, I was understanding how close and important that kind of relationship with beauty that I grew up with was for me. Like, that was very important. I was really missing that. And I'm not saying there isn't beauty in like different things or different, could be landscapes or whatever. But I think we can easily recognize something beautiful because we were just exposed to that since we were children.
Traditionally, yes, but let me ask you as a woman, there's all...
Are we going there already?
We're right there. How is it as an Italian woman to constantly have that, I don't want to call it pressure because that may be provocative, but to constantly compare yourself or be aware of that beauty that surrounds you. And is it more difficult for a woman in Italy to turn, let's say, a page where she's not naturally, 25?
But you're talking about like physical beauty now, like
Well, I mean, I think,
aesthetics.
we're talking about aesthetics, but if you look at a Roman sculpture, or, I mean, like I said, I think everything you say is very true, but I do feel sometimes that this addiction to beauty may not be so easy, because it's been also, like I said, it's been also a standard you constantly sort of like compare yourself to,
Well, standards changed so much throughout the years. I mean, the problem is the standard to me. The problem is that there is a standard.
But if I go to what's the name of the square in the central square in Bologna, the beautiful one?
Piazza Maggiore.
Piazza Maggiore. Okay, I look at that sculpture of Neptune.
Neptune, yep.
I mean, the guy looks like a Calvin Klein model. He has a bit of a longer beard. I mean, it's crazy how little male standards really changed, I mean, if you slightly fix his hair up, and put some underwear on him, I take a picture. It doesn't look so bad.
But male and female have a different story to me. And you're subject to way less pressure than we do. You do.
You do have pressure.
We do feel it. I mean, we grew up with that. It's cultural. Unfortunately, it's cultural as well. Like,
I'm just trying to understand, because obviously I'm not from here.
For what concerns my personal life, I grew up with a family which expected perfection from me. Not physical perfection. It was about everything else. Like, you had to be so great at school, you had to be the best one at whatever you were doing. So it's the standards.
But there would be conditional love was very like, let's say, was conditional love was very much what was given in your family. Because when you say you have to have perfection, it was also a very male-dominated family.
Not very.
Because on the father's side, you feel you have to earn the love. On the mother's side, the love would be given.
That's what you say. That's not really
I'm not
what
saying
happens.
it applies to every person, but then there could be more masculine acting mothers, But I think in general you would say the mother's love is not the one that needs to be earned. You can kill 5 people and your mother would still say, that's my son.
But that's false. That's not what happens in like normal families. That's just...
No,
I mean, that's just your idea of things.
No, I'm general.
No, but
with a Freudian.
I wouldn't agree. No, I wouldn't agree on that. Actually, no, at all. Actually, Italian mothers are known for being very
strong.
Well, luckily,
does
at least
does
mine
the room
were.
Agree? Can we put a vote on that?
But what I was saying is that when you grow with that kind of standards, it's a problem when you look around and you feel you're never enough, because you feel you're never enough for anything that you're doing, because you're not accepting, you're not aware of who you are. You're just aiming at something different all the time. But what happened for me, my work path allowed me to free myself from this thing, and allowed me just to not feel the pressure anymore, but just to be appreciating the things, the beauty that I would be surrounded by.
I read a good line. It says that true freedom is not to be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah, that's cool.
True,
I want to become yourself, but real freedom is to become yourself truly. But I will also say something about
which means to embrace everything,
Definitely.
even the parts you don't like, not to be ashamed of any part of yourself.
You embrace it and you fight in. I mean, I guess it's like it's both thing together.
But
It's just like being from Molise. You love it, but you hate it. It's very cool.
But where you find that is actually, before they had psychology, I didn't get that.
no,
She made a joke about Molise.
Molise is my region.
Okay.
The small one, the tiny one, but we're fighters.
The one that
we
doesn't
really
exist,
believe in it.
but exists.
Oh, fuck. I was expecting for something more. More
think-
You know,
creative
I wanted
from
to say
you.
about something about the Neptune.
I think this is getting very Italian.
You know that the Neptune statue in Bologna is one of the 7 secrets in Bologna, because Bologna has 7 secrets, and the Neptune one is that they didn't want the sculpture to do the penis of the statue. So if you watch the statue in a particular perspective, it has a really big penis. I believe that you needed to know that.
And you know what? I haven't noticed yet, but I'm never going to pass the sculpture in the same way as I did. But let me tell you something else since we talk about it. No, I'm joking.
Where's this going? Let's go back.
Let's go back. You know what's interesting, actually, that what we just talked about. You know, there used to be, obviously, psychology is kind of like an invention of Freudian subconscious ideas, but before they had fairy tales. And you know, do you know Grimm's fairy tales? You know, the classic one.
Yep.
You know, but you know what's the one called in Italy where the frog, where the girl kisses the frog and becomes the king?
La principessa del ranocchio,
Yep.
I guess.
Yeah.
The princess and the frog, actually.
The
is the
princess
name.
and the frog. Now, what's interesting is that all of these, I mean, this is the simple example, that's why I'm giving it to you, but all these fairy tales they had then were very particular psychological archetypes of what we are. And they were very, very carefully designed. So, you know, in a fairy tale, when they say there is the prince and the princess, they often represent, or they almost always represent, different parts of your personality. And actually, the witch, you're gonna like that one. The witch is often your mother. So if the girl that kisses the frog that becomes the prince, that actually means, I mean, I don't think it's even a frog. I think it's a turd. Come on to design, and you know, it's a slimy frog. You know?
Yeah, we say ranocchio.
Ranocchio.
Yeah, he's kind of a
So the
male
idea
frog.
is that you have to overcome and love something that you really hate, that is really disgusting to you, which would be the parts in your personality, in yourself, in your face, in your body, in your life that you're really rejecting. So in that fairy tale, it's the example, if you can kiss and love that side of yourself that you think is really disgusting, really like a slimy frog, and you can kiss it with a passion, you unite yourself, and that's why the fairy tales always ends with you live happily ever after, because you don't fragmentize about yourself, you're becoming that one person that's in peace with himself. So all of these fairy tales have different paths of uniting the parts of your personality. When you read them, it's actually very interesting. If you read them with that note, which is another, you know, that you only see for what you know. But if you look at fairy tales from that perspective, that they're actually very psychological metaphors about trying to come to terms. In English today, you would say, "This is microphone getting lower? Am I getting drunk?" Okay.
It does.
It does, right? I thought I'm getting smaller. Anyway, I think today the word would be coping. If you'll be able to cope with the sides of yourself you don't really accepting, you're gonna become, I mean, I guess today you would go to therapy, but back in the day you just have to get the frog, you know.
That's amor fati. kind of loving the destiny as something that's happening to you, and to embrace it. It's
Yeah,
like
well, you have to embrace the...
The keywords is embrace today.
You have to make love to the frog, and then you're going to be happily ever after. But the frog is inside of you. That was the point I was trying to make. I mean, in that fairy tale, which I think is an interesting way of looking at things, you know. Are you friends with your frog?
We're getting there.
There are many frogs, I believe. Sometimes we are friends with some of them, sometimes we are friends with
And
others.
sometimes there's another frog coming around the corner we
Yeah.
didn't think about, you know.
And we have never
there's-
seen before,
It's
yeah.
not just one, you know, but, you know, again, you know,
Yeah, but, you know, it takes time.
there's a lot
Getting
in
to know the frog.
getting to know loving the frog takes time.
Or your life, maybe.
Yeah.
all your life.
And it's not just about taking Viagra and getting over it, you know, you really have to love the frog, you know.
Does the frog change just a little bit?
I guess, yeah, I mean, it's definitely, but like I said, I think just the metaphors and the complexity they had in these fairy tales, you know, like the frog, like, you know, like, I mean, there's different versions you can say, you know, the girl in the tower that lets her hair down, you know, all of these.
Rapunzel.
Yeah.
Rapunzel.
These are all different metaphors for, you know, trying to, you know, there's a very good one called the iron oven, which is you ever heard of that one? I cannot tell you fairy tales right now, right? You guys going to fall asleep. But
You seem to like it.
well, you know, because I mean, I think it's true. They're very visual. I'm a photographer, so I'm very visual. They're very visual examples of the iron oven is a very good example of narcissism. You know, and it puts a complexity to it to understand the subject. This is what photography does. This is what you're part of. This is what movies do. They create metaphors about human conditions in a way that it made us understand things in a way that we didn't understand before, which, by the way, is the best thing a photograph can do. I think the best thing any picture can do, you know, like sometimes we all talk to people or we meet somebody, and it may just be somebody we met at an airport or, you know, in a little get-together like this, you know, and suddenly somebody says something and you don't forget. You said something I've never forgotten. It's a very beautiful line, what a good photograph can do, or what a good person can do, because suddenly he draws a connection and you understand something about yourself that you knew it all the time, but you could not put a word on it. And sometimes a picture, sometimes even music, sometimes a small conversation can do that. So I think a good photograph, at least in my perspective, really has that. You said something that I've never forget. You walk away from it with something that is just an explanation that you understand yourself a little better than you've done before.
I have a question about that. Did you search, have you been searching, or is there a photo in which you find it the frog of the people, of the person you were photographing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look, I mean, that's what it's all about.
Okay.
And I tell you why, because if you do what I do, it's tricky because, you know, I'm hired to do a job that's very obvious, you know, make a beautiful woman, make her more beautiful, you know. So let's say you have a picture of Monica Bellucci, it's probably a cover for a magazine, and everybody in that room wants you to do the obvious picture. That means they don't want you to see the frogs. Leave the frogs under the covers, you know. There's not one person on your side. Now, Greta, you can, I mean, you know, seriously, you know, don't remember, Greta has a very open mind and it has an incredible magic in front of the camera, but you still have an expectation of beauty to a certain point when you get in front of the camera. And obviously this is an easy road to please. You just do the light, you know the formula. But what's interesting, you know, to go to your question, is if you take a picture, the picture that will last is the picture that has the frog. Because if you have to take a picture like you love that person. And when you love a person, you don't just love that beauty of them. You know, you're not going to look at a woman naked on the bed and say, oh my God, you look like a playmate. I mean, you say it once and you laugh about it, but that's not what you love about her. So the question always is what would somebody love about that person that is really close to her? And what represents everything she is? So in a way, to answer your question, the more frogs you can reveal in your photographs, the more diversity is a bit of a fashionable word, but the more complexity you can show about that person, the longer that picture will last, the more it will connect with people because they have also those frogs. The more narrow your perspective, the less you involve the viewer on the other side. Do I make sense?
It does.
So again, let's say you have a very, like what I said before, you have a beautiful picture from Dolce & Gabbana, right? I don't know why I always say that. But you have a beautiful picture of Dolce & Gabbana, and it's truly beautiful, and you love the woman, but you know, somehow we all know, everybody in this room, everybody who's listening knows, there's a limited amount of feelings involved, because the message is very clear: buy the dress, be impressed. You're trying to impress people, and if you try to impress people, you narrow the communication to one point. But the more of yourself, of your own frogs, I love that example that we brought this in, the more of your own feelings are you able to get into the shot, the more on the other side the person will be able to retrieve and find themselves in there. So you can literally have like when you have a lens, the light goes in, it goes to a small part, and then it opens up and it widens. How much it widens, how much you involve yourself is exactly how much you're able to involve the other person. Now, you don't have to do that. You might not want to do it because you might not want the other person to know that much about you. But the more I'm able to show about your hopes and fears, the more the person that looks at you will connect with their own hopes and fears and anxiety. Or I can just do a very beautiful portrait of you, but it will be less, there's a lack of complexity, you know?
Well, I can say two things now. The first one, I'm going to use all of this for a movie because it's very interesting, and I can't take out of my mind the image of us full of, surrounded by frogs, like all the frogs we have, like all around us. But the second one is, from your exhibition, for example, one of the photos, which are, I don't know why, it's a lot for me to handle that picture. The Scarlett Johansson one, the one where she looks in the mirror. If you haven't seen it, I really recommend everyone to, because it's beautiful. Because she's really fragile in that picture. And we don't have that kind of idea, unfortunately, about her. We always connect her to we have a different perception of her. It was given by the market,
beauty.
Whatever. Sexuality, like everything.
Well, that's exactly my problem. When I shot that picture on an assignment, it was about sexiest woman alive for Esquire.
And she still is, even more than
And
before.
she might have been, but she walked in, she was pregnant. She had morning sickness. She did not feel like the sexiest woman alive that day. But that was the job. She could not cancel. She had to do it. I had a similar experience with Gwyneth Paltrow. They don't always want to be what other people want them to be. I mean, you might play that game yourself sometimes. But it's true, and I could not break through. I had a hard time with that Scarlett shoot. I knew I had somebody very precious in front of the lens, and it was very difficult to see, like I said, because that picture you talk about that's in a museum today, it was not even published, because the magazine was not interested in that side of her. That's not what they want to see.
Of course they're not.
And that's the hard part, In the end, what will last, and you can see it from Avedon to Newton to every good photographer, the strength of the photographer, and I also feel to a certain point the strength of the actress is resisting the obvious. And a very good example for it is nudity.
But that, for example, that connects to the standards we were talking before.
Yeah, but
they didn't choose that picture, and that picture to me, it's really powerful.
It was maybe also confusing to them. It was not what they consider sexiest woman alive to be sold in Kentucky, which is where they want to make the money, But then as a photographer, it's true, you can go with it and can still take a nice picture of Scarlett. She's still a beautiful woman. But something is missing, It's hard to walk that extra mile because you have no support. And even with you, if you go that far and you said, like Scarlett has a very particular relationship to herself, and she's been very observed. I mean, she was a child star, She's doing this since, 20, 30 years, But it's true, you walk on set, and I have to keep you or Scarlett on my side. You're my ally. I need to work with you. You need to feel comfortable. But at the same time...
I love the you and Scarlett, sure.
Right? It's true.
Sure.
There's no
And
difference
Scarlett,
from me,
And Gwyneth Paltrow, yeah, sure.
Well, you're easier to work with than Gwyneth, I promise you.
How was your meeting? How did you meet the first time, you, Greta and Vincent?
Cats?
Cats.
I mean,
Could be cats.
I think we actually met on Instagram, I think.
Very original, it's true, probably. True.
Yeah, but it's like really 2020 something. Yeah.
Really 2020,
2020
Instagram.
or something. But I think we met on Instagram, and I was quite a fan of his work. And I kept posting a lot of pictures of cats because I have a problem with my cats because they're adorable.
A problem?
Okay, you're really talking about cats.
Yeah, we are definitely talking
Yes,
about
I
cats.
was waiting for this.
No, but it's true.
No, but he loves
She has
them.
a relationship with her cats. I've never seen that.
Yeah,
You
but
know.
like,
And they're so
it's not
fat.
important.
Are you sure? Are you sure it's not a frog?
Maybe it's a metaphor for
We'll talk about
a
it
furry
later.
frog, you know.
Well,
Which is
he
which,
loved them.
by the way, which
He
is
loved
interesting.
them.
Why do we love to pet cats? And there's nobody in this room who has a personal frog at home and kind of like, kisses them to bed. No, that's not what we do, So we like the fluffy cat,
And not the
Yeah.
frogs.
But that's how we met, basically.
Yeah.
He loved the cats.
No, but I mean, I knew your face for a
Also-
while. But the lady had an exclusive with Armani, so she was not easy to get. But I was like, I want to shoot that one. And my agent was like, yeah, she's with Armani. It's not possible. I was like,
Yeah, but then we did. It was really
Yeah.
magical. Can I say how it was? Like when I
You
got
can
into
say
the
anything,
room,
everything you want.
but we were not into a subway. Can I say that?
Well, it's a cinematic setup, yeah, sort of.
But am I allowed to say that?
Well, don't take all the magic away. But you can take some of the magic away.
Okay, let's just say that the pictures we got, we have like the landscape,
A movie set.
yeah, the movie set is I'm in a subway in the picture, but I'm kind of naked. So my grandmother got very mad about that, and she was like, "Greta, can I ask you a question?" I was like, "Yeah, Grandma, tell me. Were you really naked in the subway?" I was like, "Yeah."
There is air conditioning. You take cold.
I've never been invited to Grandma's, Sunday cookies since then.
She doesn't.
That
yeah,
was it.
Never. It's
No
never
more
gonna
bolognese
happen.
at Greta's grandma. I was wondering why that happens, Yeah, I'm sorry.
The obvious.
I was very intimidated, I have to say. That was not easy. But, honestly, it's a good example because I think if you have, look, the same thing. You have a very beautiful woman, naked. And I think everything about the photography, the quality of the picture is about resisting. It's all about, as soon as the picture is obvious, I think he wanted to make a comment there.
right.
That's
As-
not a frog.
No,
As
he's
soon-
angry because we only spoke about cats and not dogs.
Yeah,
so,
it's like- Please pet me.
What I was saying is, as soon as the picture is obvious, I think it loses the quality. If you take a beautiful picture of if you take a voyeuristic or picture of a beautiful woman, I mean, we've seen it all before. It's not interesting. But the more you avoid the first degree voyeurism, the more you'll be able to shoot a naked woman that is not about the nudity. And that's obviously one of the reasons why I put you in the subway, because I want to show it's fragile, it's vulnerable, it's a bit, what is she doing there? You want to raise questions. It's not about you're not wearing anything. That's the more you succeed with that, the more I think, the more there's the story and not just the obvious, the better, in my eyes, the better I did a picture,
I honestly felt that.
And it's the same thing when you take a picture of Scarlett, the less it's the obvious. But like I said, the problem is that often even Scarlett, and even I think it even takes time to convince, Greta, for example, that you say, trust me. And I don't know if I'm doing the right job because I'm trying out weird stuff, But you have to have this moment that say, trust me, there's something there, you know what I mean? Let's try something else. Because obviously we all try to hide behind a certain formula. We all try to hide behind something that we know it works. But for Greta, and I think for you, is exactly as for me. If you take a picture that is pleasing the audience, if you're acting in a way that is pleasing the audience, you're on the wrong path.
Yeah.
you know. And if you go into the water, you know, until the point that your feet don't really touch the sand, you know, and you know it gets a little bit unclear, then you know you're in better hands with yourself because you're doing something else. Now, that may go wrong, you know, but I think as long as your feet stand on the ground, you know you're repeating something, you know, and then you're applying a formula as an artist or as an actress where you say, I know I've done this before, so generally I'm wasting my time because I know it works, you know. It's not really interesting. It's just because the audience likes it, and I like when the audience likes me, you know, which is never a good advice for anybody, I think, you know.
I have a question about this. I believe there is something in the first times. The first time you have a photograph of another person, of an actress, a model, an artist, the first time you can try to find the frog, the first time. But when you have photographs of the same person more times in your life, like, as you said, Monica Bellucci, you have the photograph about her many times in different moments of her life. So you starting getting to know her. So that magic of the first time of trying to know the person but not know the person, and so stay in that strange world between knowing and not knowing, in which maybe you are able to find the frog. What happens when you start doing that more times from the same person?
Yeah, I want to know about that also. Just like how much changed the way you make your artistic thing that you're involved with the person you take a photo.
I cannot really take pictures of people that I know very well.
That was the point.
I can.
That was the point.
And I tell you one thing, I have huge fights with women in my life because they said, oh, you never photograph me, you photograph Greta, so you think Greta's more beautiful. I'm like, no, it's just different. It's my story. I can project it, I can imagine it. You know, I tell you something very personal. My mother's 86, and they get fragile, you know, and I don't take pictures of my mother. I can't. I cannot take a picture of my mom, and I know I'm making a mistake, but I can't cross that. It's too personal. Wow. And I don't know why I can do it. And I cannot take a picture of a girlfriend or of somebody that was really close to me. I never do that. I need that distance. Now, it's interesting because I think there's a lot of artists they have, I don't, you know, if I use the word artist about myself, I feel it's very pretentious, but I don't know what else to say. But I think there's some people, they need the opposite. Maybe you with directors. I don't know how it is with you, with the director. If you know the director very well, it's easier. Or if he's kind of like a distant figure, you know, what is more comfortable for you?
It depends on the kind of project, and usually depends on the director.
I mean, there are actresses who almost, you know, look at Rossellini and Bergman. They made the best movies because obviously then, you know, they sleep in the same bed at night, you know. But I think it doesn't, you know, for me it would be, I don't know if you know, you're aware of Egon Schiele and Gustav Klimt. You know, you see that very erotic, almost slightly perverted work sometimes from Egon Schiele, but he had a very distant relationship with the models that he was painting. He never touched any of them. While Klimt had sex with all of these girls he was painting, and the pictures are so romantic. You would never think so, you know, but the guy didn't even wear underwear when he was painting. He was very famous about that.
Can you see it from the paintings?
Well, I don't think you really can, but for some reason he needed that constant availability of his models. I think literally, I'm not joking, I think there's 13 women made a claim for, how do you call it, you know, in Italian, when you said, you know, he's the father of my child.
Paternità.
Paternità.
Yeah.
Fatherhood, I believe.
Yeah,
in a way,
like,
right?
Yeah.
Crazy amount of women said, you know, like, you know, he got me pregnant, you know, and you know, look
Crazy.
at his pictures. But I mean, that's just one example.
But you know, the need for directors is basically the same. There's some directors who might need to be more talkative, for example, to you. Like they might need to direct you more, to talk to you more. They might need to get to know you better and to talk about the project and your character. And there's some directors who just, you don't even see them on set because they're watching the monitors. So it depends on which way it's better for them. I prefer to talk to them, to have a very clear idea of what we're gonna do.
Because it's interesting, I saw a couple of pictures from Hitchcock on set, you know, and I mean, obviously the camera sometimes is quite close. He's sitting right there. This guy is 30 centimeters away from you. You acting for him. Quentin Tarantino does the same thing. He's sitting right next to the lens and stares at you. And he said, that is the way I get the performance. And it's true, there's others. I guess in the movies you call it video village, right? If they're almost in the other room, they're outside of this, you know. I know that Stanley Kubrick, when he did Eyes Wide Shut, he put Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman in a room, and they closed up the room, and there was nobody else in that room, you know. So I guess that was his way of sort of like trying to find that kind of like, you know, art celebrity intimacy, you know.
Yeah, but still, that's cinema, and that's people and actors acting, and that's kind of a thing. I mean, that's moving images and acting, playing a role, and doing such different stuff. Also, you can act with a photo, of course, and also actors, even if they play a role, they kind of revealing themselves more or less. But in a photo, it's I guess it's much different. It's a different.
If you shoot an actress more than one time or a model, it also means that you're somehow appearing to their mythology, you know? Because I think that's something that's very important. We all have a certain sense of mythology. We all, I might get sidetracked when I start that right now, but you know, we're all inventing ourselves in the conditions and circumstances that are available to us. We're all inventing our own life. That starts with the haircut we have, you know, it ends up with the shoes we do, but with the life we're living, it's an invention. Some people have more imagination or have more courage of imagination than others, and they invent themselves as more crazy life. But you know, that invention is what we're manifesting. It's, you know, and I think that invention comes from a certain source of mythology. These mythologies are values that come through us, through you, for Italian. What do you think a woman should be like? What do you think a man should be like? There's something, again, there's a very unconscious idea of a man, and it goes back to what you said in the beginning. Are you going to fight it? Or are you going to support? Are you going to embrace it? Am I going to be the son my father wanted to have? I ask myself that all the time, because my father was obsessed with Italian women and Italian cinema, you know, and I'm like, maybe I'm just living his life, you know, what am I doing here? But, you know, like I said, I think even when, you know, we can ask the women in this room, or we can ask Greta because she has a microphone.
The good point.
There is an idea of femininity, there is an idea of a woman that you feel is respectable. There's an idea of womanhood that you're displaying visually and emotionally, and it's a choice you make to a certain point, but there's also an unconscious part that's driving you. I mean, obviously you like to be controversial, you have specific ideas about women that comes from a certain place. And the same thing for you as a man. I think especially in Italy, for example, I think it's very pronounced, because you're the role of a man and a woman are very defined. If you watch The Godfather, for example, you can see Al Pacino's relationship with Diane Keaton, the woman from New York, and you see Michael, you know, his relationship when he goes to Sicily. Remember that film?
Apollonia is the girl she finds.
But think about
Sicily.
it. There is the relationship he has with Diane Keaton is very on eye level. She's like the wasp, rich, upper class kind of woman. They talk. It doesn't seem to be that passionate, but I think they're kind of a power couple. They're like, okay, baby, we got this. You know, we're not like the others. You know, they go shopping. You know, and then he kills the guy, and he goes to Sicily. And with Apollonia, they hardly speak. You know, remember when she just touches her. A beautiful scene where she just touches the little necklace he's giving her. So it's a relationship one relationship is based on similarities, almost like a brother and sister thing. Our relationship is good as we know each other. But the relationship with a Sicilian woman is like our relationship is good as we're different. We celebrate the differences. Look, she hardly speaks English. Wednesday, Tuesday, Friday, you know. So I think all of this comes from, do I want to be understood? There's traditions where I go to the bar with the boys. You know, I have a male-orientated tradition in mythology.
Very German.
or have a women's orientated sexuality, you know. Well, you know, if you go to, you know, I mean, I can talk about this for hours. I don't know if this is interesting to anybody, you know. But if you go out with a Swedish woman, I could tell you a funny story. It's a very different relationship if you go out with a Puerto Rican woman, you know, because the mythology of the woman is different. Where's yours?
Well, your question got lost, kind of, in the process, but you were asking me if there's a certain type of woman I find respectable.
In you.
In me.
You are taking the role of a woman in the way you talk. You're controversial. I've seen that.
Okay.
You have very specific opinions.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you have an idea of womanhood, of dignity. That is related to a certain, that is reacting from somewhere.
I honestly have
There's
no
women
idea
you
how
respect, there's women you know, there's women you don't respect, you know.
So, in my personal development, and acting helped me a lot with that, judgment rarely exists. Like, acting freed me from the judgment process. Because that's what we're used to every time. We're used to saying that deserves respect or that doesn't, to yourself or to people as well.
Because you feel it's a playground where you can try out things and you don't have to, it doesn't really have to be you. You can just be that person without justifying it because it's the role you play.
Are you talking about the role or are you talking about me?
I'm talking about acting. When you say acting is liberating yourself.
Because it's teaching me how to just accept, and that's the same thing as traveling most of the time. You just look around and you just see diversity. You're not judging things which are different from you. You're just accepting and embracing and admiring the differences. You just cut out the judgment part.
Of the character you're playing.
Well, not just of the character, of everything around you.
The way you acknowledge world, of the way you relate to the world.
But that's the beauty about acting.
Okay. About that, I will suggest you to watch Bellissima from Lucaino Visconti, which is kind of, I guess, synthesize everything that kind of we talked about. There's this movie from the 50s that it was in Piazza Maggiore last week, and it's called Bellissima, which is this thing from beauty. And I don't know, our generation got some liberation and a way of liberation, but this movie is from the 50s, and it definitely got something that we kind of maybe understand now, but that's a movie about it. It's about a mother. It's about a mother with a child that wants to put in the Cinecittà world. So wants to kind of like reach the kind of standard of beauty, and she struggles with that. She's a conflict with that. So with the figure,
the daughter that is
not the mother. The mother wants that. The daughter is like 5 years old, something like this. She's just like got in that world that she doesn't have a choice, and the mother wants something from the daughter, and then she understood something. But I guess it's kind of like synthesize a lot of things, and that can help us understand kind of what we are talking about. It's a lot of, I mean, it's Italian.
Very advanced film for the 1950s.
Definitely. But that's Lucaino Visconti, and then there's Zeffirelli, Francesco Rosi, and some Zavattini. That's kind of like the best of neorealism, Italian neorealism. And they got something, they called it Bellissima. There is Anna Magnani, who is an actress, at the...
I just found out, I didn't know that it was actually the Italian government who cut off the neorealist movement. That it was obviously, it developed kind of naturally after the war, and then the government put an end to it because it did not want Italy to be shown in that kind of like poor, sort of socialistic kind of way. They said this is not a good way of how we're presenting Italy, because it obviously played on the streets, and you know had that realism was not how they liked Italy to be represented in foreign countries, so they really tried to suppress it, and that's why then in the end, obviously, De Sica, they just started doing comedies, you know.
They changed the society, and that's changed the neorealism.
But it was a fairly short period.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, considering the influence it had. I mean, there would be no Martin Scorsese, there would be no Quentin Tarantino without. I mean, there was nothing like it. You know, I mean, the influence it had on me, on my photography. You know, I mean, it's, and I don't even know why. You know, but I was just watching Rocco and His Brothers a couple of nights ago, and I'm still wondering why a black and white film seems more real to me. The emotion, it seems so much more real to me than any color movie that is so much more perfect, you know, that's been shot, whatever, you know, later or today, you know. There's something in there that is really authentic, you know, to the human condition, you know.
Was there a moment in which, I mean, is kind of curious to be an artist as you are, that photographs all people that are the people of fame, you know, the famous people, and the way you try to intercept their fragility. Of course, you too, Greta, you're also a great actress. That's why you will be the famous that we hope. But the point of my question is, in that moment, in that study, in that place, you take photographs. You are the photographer, but still you are having a relationship with people that are so famous. How did you get to that? Which was the way you decided, or maybe not decided, but just it happened that you started taking photographs of icons living? Because it's really peculiar, something. I mean, you're an art, because I really like your photographs. I love them. Some of them are really great.
Thank you.
I truly believe that while saying, but it's so interesting. It was so interesting for me to say, how did it became it? Not the photograph, because you maybe could photograph also myself, which I'm no one, and find my frog, and that would be great. But you didn't do to me. You did to the icon living person, people. How it happened? Which was the way it happened? Because it's
like from a career point of view.
Yeah, career, but
from
even
a personal point of view.
Personal is more interesting for me, but even career, decide yourself.
I read you some. I mean, you know what? I mean, I tell you something that is interesting that I actually read yesterday night, and I thought maybe I could say it to you. And it's from Oscar Wilde, and I think it sort of says a lot. And he said, it's about every portrait that is painted with feelings is a portrait of the artist and not of the sitter. The sitter is merely an accident, an occasion. It's not the one who is revealed by the painter, but it's rather the painter who, on the colored canvas, reveals himself. And I think that's very true. And I think it's not just for the painter, the photographer. It's also for the people looking at the painting. You know, like a famous person, in the best sense of the word, doesn't exist besides on paper. And I think they struggle with it, your question. They have the capacity to guide your imagination. Now, it's true, I always I started photography kind of late. I really just started photography because I was so poor and I could never pay my bills. And I was like in my late 20s. And I was dating a stripper and she left me. I don't know if this is interesting. But it was a disaster. I had no money. My first pictures were not mine. I took them from a friend who was actually Italian. Andrea Giacobbe gave me pictures. And with his pictures, I went to an agency and I says, can I get some models? Because I didn't have anything, but I had no money. I couldn't take a cab to the agency. But back in the day, I was in Paris then, I got 200 francs if you do a test of a young girl. And 200 francs for me was like, I don't know how much is in lira, but obviously that was in the 90s. That was big money for me, So with Andrea's pictures, they gave me girls. And my career started on a lie. I have to admit that.
That's perfect.
And but without talking too much about myself, I go back to your question in a more I don't know if I want to call it a strategic way. there's a line from Alfred Hitchcock, and he says, if I use famous actresses, it saves me 15 to 20 minutes of expedition, meaning explanation. If you have Grace Kelly, if you have James Stewart, if you have Anna Magnani, if you have these people, people already have an idea who they are. If I use it in my pictures, I can explain them better. If I shoot Monica Bellucci in my way, I can explain my photographs better because you already think you know Monica, you already think you know Greta. But I says, no, this is my Greta, I was a bit worried about her with her hair because, she always has the fringe, And I was like, I want to do it without the fringe. I didn't know, maybe maybe that's like, it's a very, very personal, touchy subject, So it's like, I was really stepping on it was really like tiptoeing around you in the beginning. I was like, can we do that? Can we do that?
Yeah, I just said,
And she was really like, no problem, so that's true. I was just very intimidated.
By an Italian woman. Yeah, from Molise, Vincent.
From Molise, Vincent.
What is Molise? That's the area where you're from.
An eternal
Molise
joke.
is my region.
Okay.
It's eternal joke.
Very
Eternal
tiny.
joke.
Do they also have a certain pasta? Is there,
Do they have something in
Tagliatelle
Molise?
Molise?
We don't really know about that.
They have
Because every area
brodetto
has
di pesce. You'll try it. You'll come
I'll try
visit
it,
and
okay.
you'll try
But
it.
you were
don't
saying
worry.
something
We're
really,
getting sidetracked.
really interesting.
Okay, so
Really interesting.
I think, look, I was always trying, to shoot the known girls. And I think I was always very lucky with it. And it started with models. And one day they asked me to shoot Beyonce, I think was my first celebrity portrait. And I had no idea how to do that. It was funny. I can tell you the story. I don't know if that's boring. But I realized that, look, an actress in a film she is the narrative purpose of the story. Now, if you do a movie, a woman like Greta has the capacity, the emotional and visual capacity to guide your attention, to keep your attention through the story. Now, this is not a movie about Greta or about Monica or about Grace Kelly, because then it would be a biography. That's not what we do. We do story. But some people have the capacity to capture your attention in a way that what Oscar Wilde says, because they're reflecting a part of yourself. And that's why sometimes, for example, when you talk about the picture from Scarlett Johansson, it's a picture of, for the people that probably don't know this picture, it's a picture of Scarlett looking in the mirror. And I want to do that because I said, this is just a reflection of you. You're looking at, yes, you do need them. I do need Greta in front of the camera, and she is the one. But what she does is also, you're looking at yourself. It's a self-revealing part. You're looking at your hopes, your fears. You think it's a better... again, my favorite word. It comes... Where does celebrity come from? It comes from mythology. It comes from fairy tales, Then the first real famous people were opera singers. And then it moved into Hollywood. And Hollywood built a very sophisticated mythology, mysterious system about these actresses, remember Greta Garbo, Mae West, it was just a different planet in the literal sense, Why? Because we can project on them. We see part of ourselves in them. You don't see Greta for the way she is. You see Greta for the way you are. And that's the interesting phenomenon. And and as a photographer, we don't shoot things the way they are. We photograph things the way we are. And in that sense, in 125th of a second, there is a conscious and an unconscious combination, and it becomes a photograph. And then it's something tangible you can look at. And that intuitive, unconscious part suddenly is in front of you. You look at it, you said, why do I do that? You're confronting yourself with something about yourself. Does it make, am I getting too complicated?
No. Keep going.
You're projecting something in a very intuitive, very quick, boom, I take the picture, But you like it, you're connecting with it. When you see something, you feel something. But what you feel, you don't control. You feel something, it comes from, you can feel an uncomfort, you can feel comfort, you can feel, it stimulates your hormones or your desire, or it stimulates, or you feel calm, in many ways. But everybody here feels different. There's never two people who feel the same way, about a photograph. That's what I said before. It refines your emotional landscape. And then an actress has that capacity to take all that, and keep you going through the story, So that's a very, very interesting phenomenon. It's not, and if it's not about them, if it's not about the person, like let's say about yourself, it's not interesting for you. You're going to lose interest. You're going to lose interest in other people, but not in yourself. So the key on taking pictures is that you say, make it through them as much about you as possible. Does it make sense?
Yep.
I add you one last thing. I'm sorry if I'm boring, if I'm getting too complicated. Please raise your left hand. There is a German philosopher called Hegel, who developed.
We studied philosophy, so I know.
Okay, so you
too much.
So you can correct me. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, do that.
So Hegel developed a system as the last big German idealist, who is called the dialectual process. There's the thesis, the antithesis, the synthesis. So I think his idea is that only through something exterior, like a negative, different side, and with the involvement in it, you can really know who you are. Now, the best relationship for that would be being in love. Now the other person is not you, but he through him you become the version of yourself that you're supposed to be. Hegel says something very nice. He says, through the other, closer through myself. It's a beautiful definition of love, I think. And you can have the same, because I'm a photographer and I've never done anything else. I read everything as a photographer, so I can say, yes, so you take a picture, it's an outside part of, it's you took it. It's an outside part, you look at it, but it's not you. But by looking at that picture, you discover a place in yourself you would have not seen without this. So only by confronting yourself with the outside of something that you had inside, you can understand what you really are. Am I too complicated?
So may we say that in every act of photography you do, you both fall in love to what you're photographing, and you both fall in love for yourself.
And you reveal.
Yeah, in that sense, fall in love in that sense.
I guess you can say this in general. The idea about art. I really hope this is not boring. If the idea about art that it can take you to a place, but it leaves you alone. Art or movies, they're a bridge. They're not a destination. It's not so telling you what you do when you're there, but it takes you there and then it leaves you alone. You feel something, but it never tells you. You cannot force somebody to feel something specific. You cannot teach somebody what's in his heart. It's not what it's all about. But you can take somebody to a certain place and they said, I love being here. And the other person can look around and say, maybe they feel alienated, maybe they feel comfortable, maybe they feel cold. But they feel something. And they feel something they wouldn't feel if they wouldn't be there. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And I think that's the interesting part. So, what happens? They're like, look, you take me to your favorite restaurant in Bologna. And and you say, okay, you have to eat the tortellini with the brothel, whatever, something very typical. I'm just trying to learn about it. And you say, oh, it's such a beautiful place. And then, there's these old waitress, and you have to look out of the window and you see the church. And I can be there, but I'm not going to feel what you feel, because, maybe I feel alienated because I say, oh, these Italians, they're always so loud and they talk so much and I don't get it. And, it's kind of, everything is with cheese. But I feel something, and I would never have that experience without it. That's what I say. Art can take you to a place, and then you have to leave it alone, and that's what a celebrity does. They can guide you somewhere because they soak you in with the curiosity. I see Greta's face. Look, I'm using the magnetism and the charisma she has, and I follow it. And then it's sort of like, like she guides me to some emotional confrontation. And then it's me, it's not her anymore. And that's what really the key of celebrity is. That's why we use mythological stories, you know, or to translate it in Italian thing. That's what the saints did in the Catholic tradition, you know. They are celebrities. You know.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Saint Vincent, Saint Vincent. I don't know why I came up with that name. Saint Paul. You know, there's a. Am I talking too much?
No. No, when we are quiet, it's because we are interested. So that's really important.
Feuerbach is an interesting philosopher from the around the French Revolution, and he made a comparison that I really like. He said, "Look, the Catholic saints, they are just like us, but they're just a little better. They just have this character quality that we don't have. They cut their coat in half. They just more pure." And they look like us. We aspire to be them, but we can never be them. And then you can really see in the Industrial Revolution, with the world becoming more materialistic and sort of like slightly demystified, it's the exact same role that's been taken over by celebrities. They're just a little better than us, and it's very much today. That's why we use filters on Instagram, you know, because this slight idolization. They look like us, but you know, they just have this one edge of what we don't have, which is, you know, on the other side, if you put it into the most trivial sense, what pornography does. It just looks always like a little better than what we have at home, you know? Is it? No, of course not, you know. But it follows the same psychological rules, you know. Sorry.
I have a question. I believe we are... I will love to speak about all you're saying a lot later, but I believe we are closing our nice episode. And I have one last question for all of you, but a different question. I will do it in different ways. If all the objects, not the person, but objects in the world are disappearing, which is the last object you would love to photograph? And for you, if all the books or fairy tales are disappearing, which is the last sentences you want to read, the last book you want to read?
You first?
You first, Vincent.
Well, you say objects.
Yeah, no person, no people. Object.
I don't really photograph objects, so
that's
that's
why
not
I asked
an easy
you.
question
That's
to
why I
answer,
asked you.
you know. And if you see, my pictures are very theatrical. I just invent these
That's
worlds,
why I asked you.
I don't. For the camera doesn't make me connect with things. It makes me just imagine things. But it would be. You know what? Honestly, right now, all I can think of is maybe just shoot the Italian afternoon sun coming in through some backyard. You know. Because,
That's a great answer.
I couldn't think of anything more. You know, honestly, what's an interesting. The interesting thing of what you're saying is, if you take it to another level, that we have no control over our memory. You know, suddenly we remember things. Sometimes we want to remember things, we don't, and we all know that moment that sometimes we don't remember it. But then we all always know that sometimes out of nothing, there's a moment that we remember. You know, and it might be very uncomfortable to remember that. But what will be the last moment in your life you're going to remember? What will be your last memory that you think of before you close your eyes? I think about that a lot. You know? And you have no control over it. Something is suddenly going to pass your head, and then it might just, if you're lucky, it just goes black. You know?
You'll never have an answer of that.
Yeah.
A cigarette.
But it happens all the time. You know, it happens while we speak. Somebody
Always.
has his last memory as we're having this podcast. You know. Sorry, I don't want to go too far.
And it's a surprise.
It's a surprise, yeah. But, you know, like I said, we have no control over our memories, which on the other side, to go back to, I guess, the general idea of this podcast, has a lot to photography, because we try to control our memory. I think that's one of the bigger, you know, like motivations, where we're constantly photographing things, you know. Now you can answer. I answered first.
I just wanted to add something. Our body has memory. Like when we see objects, sometimes we're reminded of something, we remember something because our body feels it, knows it. that's how you get anxiety or panic attacks as well sometimes. You're just looking at something, and even if you have no idea, but your body's recalling something very specific.
Yeah, I think in America you would call it muscle memory. You know, things like automatically, like when you do the pasta and you don't even think about it, you just do it. You know?
Yeah, for example. You're becoming so Italian now.
I'm working on it.
I can tell.
But I don't think your grandmother's really thinking about what she's doing when she's doing the, you know, she's doing the tortellini, you know.
She knows she's not going to invite you for dinner.
And naked in the
That
subway.
she knows. That
she
knows.
doesn't need to know. I mean, that kind of muscle memory is a free memory because it doesn't need to think about themselves.
But I think it's true because we can also very much condition ourselves. Muscle memory for photographers is very important because you condition yourself. And when I work, for example, with Greta, the muscle memory is something that is, that you just condition yourself into that shot. I don't know if you think that, honestly. I would be interested when you work, because what I feel is that every person has a swing, like a rhythm. People swing in different ways, right? And I have a certain swing, and you have a swing, and they're not synchronized, you know. And also the light. At the moment, because I mean, obviously in photography, that's what I'm doing. The light has a certain swing. And then there is a moment when I work where, and it could be, I mean, let's remember photography is 125th of a second, you know, sometimes quicker, 250. But there is a moment where it swings in the same way. And it may just be that 125th of a second, and that's the shot. That is it. Now, I don't know if you ever feel that when you're delivering a line and when you're saying it, that you said, that suddenly and you know, like when you look at the contact sheets, because I still shoot film, you know, you can see. I know that you see there we were in with, you know, we had the same rhythm, and on the next shot the rhythm is off again. They're very short moments where we're swinging in the same way, but when you swing it and the rhythm matches, that's the shot.
Well, in acting is quite different. Because it's a huge machine, it's not just two people. It can be two people in a dialogue, but you really need to be... One thing in acting that I've learned is there's a special technique called the Meissner technique. The Meissner technique teaches you to listen and to influence the other person. So it's all a very deep connection between people. And that's... That thing I've been studying was really, it was really new to me, because suddenly, like everywhere, there's a lot of ego when we're working, especially in these creative places, like could be photography, could be fashion, could be cinema, there's a lot of ego, so you forget about the other person. But when you are really connected, I think you're going the same way. But you need to listen to the other person. You need to be willing to be heard as well.
Yeah, but I mean, don't you think, I mean, it's almost like a relationship. You need to let it happen.
It is.
I mean, you and Germano,
But
you
it's
don't
even
always
more.
swing in the same way, but sometimes you do,
But
and
it's
that's
even
enough.
more, it's a connection. Even just a 5 minutes connection, but it could be a very deep connection. And that's when you're swinging at the same time, but just when you connect to the other person. If it's you, you're not going to get there. You're going to think about yourself, and that's all. But you're not giving the other person anything either.
Yeah, it's funny. Like Michael Caine said the same way. He said acting is listening.
Yeah.
You know, it's really true. It's not speaking, he said it's listening, because once you listen, you really take it on.
But it's the same thing in fashion. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, I'm
it's the same
interrupting you all the
thing in
time.
fashion. It's the same thing when we got our photography. We were trying to align the whole time. Of course, sometimes we could lose that connection, but we had to be on the same page. Also because the pictures were very intimate, like taking pictures, as you were saying before, it's really intimate. You're giving something.
Yeah. And, you know, at the moment you give it to the camera, but you know, it will pass that stage.
Yeah.
You know.
It's a gift to give things.
Well, it's
to
a gift
others
to
as
have
well.
that.
To tell stories. It's a gift.
It's a gift to live in the frame. You know, not everybody lives inside the frame. You know, I met beautiful women. You point a camera at them, nothing happens. You know, nothing. And you sometimes you meet women, they walk in, and you're like, I have no idea how to make that work.
Well, what about men?
I think that's different. I grew up with women, so I have an easier connection with them. It's not easy for me to kind of like shoot men, but the problem with men in general is that they all want to be Mr. Black in a Quentin Tarantino movie, you know? They don't, you know.
I love this reference.
You know what I'm saying? Nobody wants to be Mr.
Nobody's.
Pink. They just want to be Mr. Black, and they just want to sit there. And I tell you, go up to really like Oscar-winning Hollywood actors, and they all want to be cool. They all want to be Mr. Cool. So it's very hard because they're not so comfortable in posing in front of the camera.
Tell us a story to describe this.
Well, a good story to describe this actually is that often when I shoot an actor, you know, for example, I did it with Matt Dillon, I did it with Mickey Rourke, I did it with Miles Teller. I wanted to do it with Michael Fassbender, but what's difficult is that, you know, I bring don't think this is a macho thing to do, but I literally bring a naked women on set. If I know they like women, because I did a story with Batman, Christian Bale, and he wanted to talk. And it's not, I mean, look, I'm just a kid from Germany. I have no idea what Hollywood stars talk about. And I have to take a picture. And I have to watch the lighting, his expression. There's 1,000 things going through my head when I'm taking a picture. You know, like how is his hand? How is the lighting hitting his eye? You know? And he wanted to talk to me about German movie directors, Werner Herzog. He just did a movie with Werner Herzog, you know? He talked to me about Wim Wenders. And it was and I know if I'm not going to have a good conversation, he's just going to be like, you got that, right? Let's do something else. You got that. I was like, no, I don't. You cannot say to them, the second you don't talk, men get bored. They feel silly a little bit, like posing. Now, a woman doesn't feel silly posing. It's a lot more in her DNA. And, you know, I remember I shot Emilia Clarke, and I was like, oh, I'm going to make you look like a Victoria's Secret girl. She was like, oh my God, that's so great. I would love to be a Victoria's Secret model. You know, he's like, really? But somehow they really resonate, they connect with that. But, you know, what are you going to tell to a guy? I'm going to shoot you like a Victoria's Secret model, you know? So it's harder for me it's easier to shoot men because you can do stronger lighting, you can be more, you know, but it's harder to find that, for them to open up in front of the camera, you know, at least for me. I mean, I think Bruce Weber does it really well, but he shoots a lot of film and he's creating all these situations, you know. But I think what you always want to have, you know, when you shoot an actress or an actor or any model, probably even a person on the street, there's two different directions you will take. You can extend the aesthetic distance or you can reduce the aesthetic distance. You can make them feel like this is somebody you know, you're hanging out all day, you're having a good time, you're very comfortable, and you just kind of like, you know, it's just kind of like me and Greta having tea, you know? And then you reduce the aesthetic distance. Something maybe that, you know, maybe to a certain point Italian neorealists do to film, you know? Or you can do the Hitchcock thing, or possibly, you know, like if you watch, for example, most fashion pictures, they extend the aesthetic distance. They make these people larger than life and more iconic, but they also get a bit stiff and a bit like, you know, they get a little bit unreal. And if you push both too far, you know, you might lose something, you know. But I mean, you all know the pictures of Mario Testino, right? Yeah, Camelia. I think Mario is very great in extending the aesthetic distance. He makes people look like rich people are all beautiful. They all have a great time. They're living on boats and they kind of like wake up in big villas. You know, that's his thing. You know, and I think the opposite, for example, would be the psychological approach from Richard Avedon. You know, one brings the people really close, and one, you know, but I think that's you always kind of like work in between those parameters. You know.
Interesting.
And most movies do,
and
you know.
Obviously,
Italian neorealism, French Nouvelle Vague really reduces the aesthetic distance. Look, watch a Hitchcock movie from the 1940s, and all the men wear tuxedos, and the women wear big dresses, and they're always in big houses, you know. And it's like it's larger than life, you know. And personally, I even really think that the back projection when they're driving, you know, that's a little bit technically a little bit badly done often, but that's cinema. That is cinema that you see. It's not real. It's cinema, you know, it's kind of half real, you know. That's why I shoot the sets. It's not real, you know, it's a picture, you know, it's an invention, you know. So I think you can really see how different, you know, there's a different way of in the end what it's all about is defining the human condition, you know.
Is there something you are still trying to refine about, as we said at the first part of this podcast, about the first beauty you saw? Is there something you have not taken yet about the first wandering you had?
I think every picture you do is a rehearsal for the next one. You never think you got it. And when I go through my exhibitions, I'm like, it's a disaster. But I mean, when I'm thinking back, I'm thinking I should have been more, you know. There's a term from therapists. They say, be more gentle on yourself. You know, I think that's something but don't you think most people in our business could use that sometimes? You know.
Everyone.
Yeah. Well, yeah, probably
Basically
everybody. But I think especially people who are been judged. You know, as professionally been judged all the time. You know, by others. And the judgment is rough. You, the audience, you guys are rough. You know, if you're not coming, if you're not there, you're like, I don't like it. You know, there's a beautiful, guys remember Stardust Memories from Woody Allen? Remember when he meets the aliens? You know, remember that? Like, there's like these aliens walking out of the spaceship and they run into Woody Allen. And one of the aliens says, oh, we know who you are, but we prefer your earlier work. That was more funny. He's like, wherever I go, you know, I used to be better before. You always feel like somebody's judging your work, you know. And for me, but so yeah, I mean, I definitely think, you know, I wish, you know, when you get older, you always think, the classic line, I guess, is always that you say, I wish I knew then what I knew now. And I guess the basic line is also like, you know, like what you say, don't be so hard on yourself, you know. You're not so bad. And I think I would say the same about my pictures, you know, when you ask a question about the celebrity career, I was in such a rush to do this, and then you're in LA and you wake up and you're jet lagged and you're always, you know, you just sometimes say, you know, there's a beautiful line, I don't know if this is fitting, they asked these really older women, you know, there was this classic question, what do you think it's all about when you get older about life? She said a beautiful thing. She said, 20 minutes. She said to sometimes take 20 minutes more. You know, don't leave, don't do the next thing. When it's nice, stay half an hour, 20 minutes longer. And in those 20 minutes, in those 30 minutes, so much more life will happen that you cut away, that you should allow to happen, you know, that will completely change your quality of life. When you're with a person, you know, like you always think you have to go the next thing, you have to catch the train to Milan, you have to take care of your cats. I mean, you know, just sometimes take 20 minutes more and just...
That's why you took 20 minutes more of the podcast.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry if I talk so much, you know. I'm very passionate about my work.
It was really interesting.
But I think, you know, sometimes, but honestly, what I want to leave you with, what I think is interesting, that there is a lot more what we do with photography than we think there is, because it's really a self-revealing process. But there's also that world out there, that world we look at. It's not stone and sky and sand. It's reflections of light, and there are 8 billion eyes looking at it. This world is 8 billion eyes opening, closing, changing perspective. The things are not what they are. They're not solid. They are what the light is reflecting back to us and what we make out of it, you know? And I think that's always, that's the truth. It's not there, it's not how it is. It's what 8 billion eyes constantly make out of this, you know, by opening and closing and walking to the left and feeling something more on the right and just moving forward.
Is the frame we are able to catch, maybe also. Thank you very much.
The birth of modern art.
Thank you very much, Vincent. Thanks very much,
Vincent.
Greta. It was such a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you, everybody who was here. Thank you, Spaghetti. This is just the beginning of many beautiful things we are going to do. And you can go to see the Vincent Peters exhibition in Palazzo Albergatti with 2T, right? Or 1T? 2T. 1T. Palazzo Albergatti. Until September, right? Until September.
October. Man. I'm here the
Perfect.
whole summer.
So go and see that.
Grazie mille.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Grazie.